got one more.
Test.
Lisa Chiesa. Lisa Chiesa. Council.
Hello?
I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Roll call.
Mr. Bernardo? Here. Mr. Hirschman?
Here.
Mr. Lake?
Here.
Mr. Martre?
Here.
Mr. Martucci? Mr. Mongeau?
Here.
Mr. Canzella?
Here.
Mrs. Sankey?
Here.
And Mr. Amato?
Here. Let's stand for a moment of silence and pledge allegiance, please. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to have a motion for the minutes of the previous meeting. So moved. Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. O'Malley,
Yes,
I would like to move to accept the agenda with flexibility.
I'm sorry.
I would like to move that we accept the agenda with flexibility.
Mr. Ronaldo is asking for flexibility in the agenda. Do I have a second, please? All in favor? Any opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bernardo?
Yes.
Mr. Hirschman?
No.
Mr. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Martre?
Yes.
Mr. Martucci? Mr. Mongeau?
Yes.
Mr. Canzella?
Yes.
Mrs. Sankey? And Mr. Amato?
Yes.
Motion carried.
I have a motion for the treasurer's report. Motion and second, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. I have a motion for the payment of general and federal fund bills.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Payment of the cafeteria fund bills. Motion to a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Tonight we have public comment from stash.
Good evening. I just wanted to follow up with the board. Ms. Sexton and Mr. Martre did get your call the other day, but didn't have the opportunity to call you back. Of course, I was calling in reference to the building, the stadium, which is approved to go down here in January, February. I saw on the agenda that there's committee meetings, was one or there's going to be one scheduled. I wanted to see if I could be part of that next committee meeting so we can get this wrapped up, and get the location determined and get us down here.
We need to meet them.
Right, that's what I'm saying, so I'm going to go on the record and say, like, you know, when can we do this and get it done and get it
Everything opens up, we'll go ahead and move that taken care of.
I understood there was like deliveries and stuff still being made to the districts, that's why wasn't real sure about that. It could be brought down there.
I'm sure it probably had to do with food service.
So you're saying we gotta wait till things open up, because we're talking,
Like, we can put something right now, and we have a little bit of sale, if we work with them.
but I appreciate it. We have all the insurance and everything lined up and everything's ready to go, and we haven't paid any premiums since, it's still sitting at the place we're paying for, so, sooner we could get it, we appreciate it, because we got a lot of work to do with it before season hopefully gets started. Appreciate it, all.
Thank you. Mr. Canolo, I assume you want to take finance. Mr. King.
That's correct. Yes, here is the presentation.
Okay, we'll move to finance. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the board. As a continuation from the meeting, or last meeting, you have on your agenda tonight a resolution that authorizes the board funding of 2013 A-bond. As part of last month's presentation, we recommended reducing your interest costs, going from a higher rate to a lower rate, and taking those savings as a debt service reduction, on extending the debt, on increasing, only taking the interest rate reduction, and that will be taken next year. What you have in front of you is a separate alternative, and I think everybody should have that in front of them. Yes. So on page 2 of that, we completed analysis that's talking to your administration, because you're no different than every other school district in the state of Pennsylvania. If there was a way to force to the front more savings from a budget perspective, not savings from an actual interest rate reduction, from a budget perspective. And that's what we compared on page 1 of this presentation. On the left-hand side, this is what we talked about last month. You can see highlighted in yellow, by reducing your interest cost, you're able to save roughly $740,000 next budget year. We then looked at, is there a way, what is the most you could save next year from a budget perspective, not from an interest rate reduction, but how can we reduce your debt service next year? You can take those 2 bond issues and reduce its payment to its minimum amount, and then anything above and beyond your savings would spread out over the same life that you're going to pay it as a higher principal payment. And that's what you can see on the right-hand side. This is a weapon that you can use if needed. The documents are set up that way. So if you thought, geez, we don't know where our earnings is going to come in, we don't know where the state's going to come in, this is an alternative that you could use to gain roughly $2 million to the budget next year. That's a budgetary savings, not a interest rate savings. The total interest savings would still remain about $740,000 over the life of the issue. And then you would pay for the difference, whatever you didn't save, over that same time frame. The way the documents are crafted tonight, you don't have to make that decision. It authorizes your board president and your administration, once documents are completed, to authorize the bond sale. It can be done at that time. That's going to be about 3 to 4 weeks from now, which just so happens coincides with your budget. But I thought it was worthwhile that during the budget process that you should at least hear this, because it's something you do when you do a bond transaction. You don't want to do it separately. You want to do it now if you thought you needed that. But if you don't need it, you shouldn't do it. But if you need it, then we wanted to make sure that you knew about it and you consider it for your budget. So before we move any further, if you want to discuss that option, if it's something that you want to consider or something that you think you're okay, and let's just reduce the interest costs in the district. So I'm glad that talk about it now or just keep moving.
Mrs. Grinnell, do you have a comment on that, please?
Absolutely. So it's actually very easy to see on this paper on page 1. you can see that highlighted the savings were about 730,000 gross savings. You get the highlighted yellow on the left-hand side. The total amount's 730,000 in differential. On the right-hand side, the differential is only 377. So aiding to those savings by taking those payments and stretching out a long period of time. Now, the present value is not going to change because if you pay more later and today you receive the benefit today, it all washes out to the same. But from a true dollar perspective, it's the difference in those two numbers. So it does cost you roughly, let's just call it $400,000 more over the next 20 years to come up with $2 million today. Now, the good news is that interest rates are working in your favor. Your savings are actually going higher. We didn't change the savings. We're not quite there yet. But as if the savings were to get higher, that differential gets lower, obviously.
Anybody else have any questions for John?
Basically just borrowing and then what we've always borrowed.
It's restructuring your payment. School districts across Pennsylvania, unfortunately, have used it in the past. It's not something that we like to do, but it's a weapon that school districts that, in situations like this, have used to help alleviate pressure in the general fund. Kind of where there's unknowns of how we're going to come up with budget line next year. So, guaranteed, yeah, what you're going to have. And not extended, yes, absolutely. That's the safe plan. And again, that's the plan we're moving forward with, but this is a weapon that you could utilize if needed. The final two pages are just, page 2 is just a straight graph. What you're seeing with the stock market is actually helping the bond market. We had a lack of liquidity in the past 2 months. Now we're starting to see the bond market stabilize. We're actually seeing rates in the past week and a half come down, and savings and issues actually come up. But again, we're not quite ready to lock in rates yet, but all things are pointing towards an even better transaction in the next 3 weeks. The final piece before we go tonight, and we've talked about this many times, but I just want to, we've dug into this deeply, especially the last 3 weeks, is that outstanding lease payment. It is at a substantially higher interest rate than the current market. You are locked into making payments on that through 2024. You do have the ability to prepay that, but that prepayment will be making the exact payments that are due through 2024 and then buying that lease out. It's essentially, if you had a lease payment that you entered into last year that had 4 years remaining, in order to get out of that lease, you have to make those 4 years worth of payments before you can actually buy that car. And that's how this lease is set up. Doesn't make mathematical sense to do it today. There is, whenever it does make sense, there's a nice bonus there because they're holding $1 million a year in money as collateral against it. So whenever it does make sense, and it will make sense prior to that 2024, if we start to get within a 2-year period, we see the math on this works better. So we're going to continually monitor what we have, and as we start to get closer to that, there could be an opportunity a year from now, a year and a half from now. But 4 years out, it just doesn't work because you've got to borrow money to make payments. And that just doesn't work no matter how low rates get. But within a year and a half to 2 years, if rates remain relatively where they are today, you could potentially get that $1 million back and actually reduce your interest costs as well. So we're going to continue to monitor that and make it happen. Back to the resolution, it's very similar to what you've seen in the past. It says not to exceed numbers that have not to exceed principal of $24 million. The actual number of bonds that are going to be issued are roughly about $20.5 million. You won't be able to issue anything more than that because all this resolution authorizes is to pay off the old bonds and issue ones with an interest rate. We always set them out higher than that resolution because we create an amortization schedule, and it gives you the flexibility to change that schedule if you decide to use something like that school year funding. You have the ability in that 20 million to do that without actually issuing higher amount. With me on the phone tonight is Lisa Chiesa. Lisa's bond counsel. She's been bond counsel position for 15 to 20 years now. It's been forever. Is that right, Lisa? Can you hear me? Lisa. So So if you had any specific questions on resolutions, she can answer them. If not, I can answer questions regarding numbers or any vote. Thank you.
Anything else for John? Thank you. Yes, Mr. Mongeau, let's just start with finance. We'll go through and then circle back around to the beginning of the agenda.
Item B, debt resolution. You guys give me on it. Request be approved to authorize the incurring of non-electoral debt by the issuance of general obligation bonds in the aggregate principal not to exceed $24,000,000, covenanting to pay and pledging all available taxing power for the payment of bond, establishing a sinking fund and appointing a sinking fund depository, fixing the form, maximum interest rates, maturity date, redemption and other provisions for the payment thereof, covenanting to accept and propose for the purchase of the bond, covenanting to accept, authorizing a filing of required documents with the Department of Community and Economic Development, ratifying and directing certain actions of officers, and making certain other covenants and provisions in respect to the bond. And I so move.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Item C, resolution requested to be approved of the attached resolution to authorize real estate tax claim sale, possibly 1.3 million.
Motion and second, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Questions? Mr. Panzella?
Just want to let everyone know, we went this through the finance committee 2 different years. We talked to other districts. This is a horrible thing for the district to get to down the road and never be able to get out of it. It would cost the district a fortune down the road. With everything going on this year, I'd say the last thing you want to do with people paying their taxes is sell your stuff for next year. So I say this company will make a windfall next year. That's my opinion.
Mr. Rinaldi, do you have a different question?
Yes, question for Mr. Now, what is your recommendation?
My recommendation is we have a big, not only waste of time, we have learned that it's something that we look at. However, if you don't need to do it, I don't recommend doing it because, as Mr. Primo said, it is very hard to have one-time install. When you try to get out of it, it will be years and you don't feel like doing it. But if you need it to pull it out, it's an emergency, something bad is there, and that's
We're going to be in the same boat next year, or we got lucky this year with everything went up with this year. Next year, we're going to be in the same boat. We can't sell any. We need to fix our budget before we just start selling stuff.
Mrs. Grinnell, could we do this at next board meeting? Okay. Yeah, I was going to say we could. Okay. We can.
Anybody can vote the way they want. I just
Yeah.
give them that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. There's no other questions. All in favor? Those opposed?
No.
Motion failed. Thank you.
Item D, budget transfer. Request the approval of the budget transfer. And I so move.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Item P, request the approval of the preliminary proposed budget for the 2020-21 year. I so move.
Second. Motion is second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
And the only other item is that we had a committee meeting held on Friday, May 22nd. You know what the next we'll move the next one. And that's all.
Mrs. Grinnell, would you like to do your presentation now?
Testing, 1, 2, testing.
Yep, we got nothing.
Can you hear me with this?
Yep.
To the board, my fellow administrators, all the citizens, I'd like to present our preliminary budget for 2020-2021. HASBO is an organization which stands for the Pennsylvania Association of School Business Officers, and they're the association that helps business managers like myself prepare for our budgets. And we get a lot of information from them, help us decipher our state subsidies and what costs are going to do in the next year or so. One of the things which they've stated, and I'm going to show you a little bit about the pressure on our state budget, is that financial stress and all the school budgets continue to grow. We have mandated costs that we have to pay for, we have no control over, continue to grow. The state funding does not keep up with the mandated costs the state requires us to do. Property taxes grow, and other priorities are increasing the financial pressures on all the school districts. We're not the only school district in this shape. I've talked to a number of business officers, and especially with the COVID, which throws a whole other wrench in the situation, it's very hard to put a budget together for next year. So the way this budget was put together is assuming we would have pretty much business as usual next year, but that could change based on what happens with COVID. In the state of Pennsylvania, there's $4.67 billion in mandated expenses alone that we are required to pay, but the state is only funding less than half of that, about $2.24 billion in cost. So they're expecting local governments to pick up more and more of a share of these costs. And
If you look at the governor's budget that's proposed and not finalized yet, there are 9 categories in the top 25 where education is funded. So it's not like the state is not giving money to education. You can see here that 36.1% of the budget for the state is allocated to education, which is the largest in the state. The next largest would be medical assistance and long-term living at 23.4%. So the state has increasing pressure too with what they have to pay for, and which in turn affects us locally. You've heard me talk about the mandated costs. Well, what are these mandated costs that we have to pay for? There's 3 specific mandated costs that continue to grow and we have to pay for, that we basically have almost no control over. The first one is special education costs. If there is a plan for a child that they have an IEP, which is an individual education plan, we have to provide for that student his needs, no matter what they are. Some students that it could cost us upwards of $75,000, $100,000 to educate due to their special needs. Most of them are not that much, but it could go up that high. The second area is charter school tuition. If someone in our school district elects to leave and go outside to say a PA cyber charter or a school for the performing arts down in Pittsburgh, we have to pay their tuition. And we have no choice. No matter what it would cost us to educate a child here, if it costs that cyber school more, we have to pay that for them. And the third area is pension costs. It's been increasing and increasing, and that is something that has to be funded. What I wanted to show you here is just basically some of the items in the special education costs, I'm not sure you're aware we have to pay for, are guidance services, psychological services, speech pathology and audiology, social worker services, their instruction and curriculum needs, if they would need aides, they would need co-teaching classes. Sometimes their legal and accounting services. Many medical services have to be paid for by us. Nursing services. There are some students that may need a full-time nurse with them all day, and we have to pay for that nurse. Along with student transportation costs. Sometimes we cannot provide the education that a child needs here at Connellsville, and we have to transport them out of the district and pay the tuition for that school in order to provide the best possible education for that child. An example of that would be the school for the deaf. If we had a child that had to be educated through the school through the deaf, if they have to be there residentially, it could cost $80,000 a year, very easily, with transportation on the weekends or whatever. I'm going to skip through this. The second mandated cost is the charter tuition costs, and there is a gap. At first, back in 2009, 10 years ago, there were almost no charter tuition. Charter schools in Pennsylvania. Well, over the last 10 years, that has changed dramatically. And so now we have students who are going outside the district electing to attend charter schools, and we have to pay for that. And you can see that there's a divide between what we pay for, the actual costs, and what the actual cost and what it costs us to help educate that child here. So that is one reason why we developed our own Falcon Online Learning Academy, to have a great way for our students to participate in cyber instead of going to an outside cyber school. The third item is the pension cost. And for this year, next year, I'm sorry, on our budget, for every dollar we spend in salaries, we have to pay 34.51% in pension costs. So those three mandated costs have put extreme pressures on all school budgets. Talk about our revenue for a minute. We get a majority of our money from the state. And there's a basic education formula that they use to determine what our subsidy is. It's a very complicated formula. It includes 3 poverty weights, English language learning rates, charter school average daily membership, the sparsity and size of the school district, median household income, and there's this big formula. I just wanted to show you it's very complicated. Don't really have to know that, but what that means is when they have these poverty rates, they use 2018 census data for next year. And for some reason, it changes every year. For next year, there were 14 school districts who moved between poverty categories. Connellsville was one of those. And due to that, we no longer qualify. And you can see many of our school districts around us no longer qualify to be considered concentrated poverty. Maybe moderate poverty, but not concentrated. And what that means is, if you look, according to the state, we are expected to lose, according to the state, about $250,000 in funding, just on our basic formula. We have a special ed formula that's even more complicated than our basic education formula. It tells how much the state's going to provide us with that. You can see it's very complicated. And the formula is something that can go up or down every year. It's not based on poverty. It's based on the children themselves. It uses something called an Act 16 report that our special education department prepares, which talks about how much it costs for each child to educate them. So it could go up or down depending on the students in the district. For next year, our special education funding is only going to increase $62,000. Transportation. We also, our third largest subsidy is transportation. And they have not, and as transportation costs obviously go up, the state has not given us any increase in transportation subsidy. And they've level funded it for next year. However, I read something today that there is a proposed budget in the state where they may increase our transportation. So daily we're getting updates of whether our subsidies are increasing, decreasing. We also heard that they might, because of COVID, they may just fund everybody at what we were last year, so we wouldn't lose that $250,000. But that's in the Senate, that's in the House. We won't know until the very last minute what is going to happen with our subsidy. We can't necessarily count on that. So we all need to know what these numbers are because it's very important. it affects everything. The size, our costs in this district affects the size of classes, the number of teachers we hire. Everything is all connected. So whether we need to increase real estate taxes, how we are going to come up with the money to pay for the education. So now let's get into what I have included in this budget in revenues. We were told that we should decrease our earned income tax and local revenues by 30% due to COVID. With all the people, we have earned income taxes we collect, and 30% may be unemployed based on the unemployment, so we were told to reduce it for next year. That represented 1.6 million. That's a lot of money. Now, it would be fantastic if that doesn't happen, but I'm budgeting what we were told to budget. It may only be 20%, and that can make a huge swing. But my budget is very conservative because I don't like surprises at the end of the year. I'd rather have it built in, all the expenses, and my revenues lower, and have the surprise at the end of the year be a happy surprise versus a really bad surprise at the end of the year. So, again, our total decrease in basic subsidy is a negative $247,000. That may go away depending on the budget. We have a decrease in our transportation subsidy over last year, practically $1.6 million. And this was due to the fact of COVID. We lost 50 days of school, and we did not pay our contractors for 50 days of taking our children to and from school. Well, what we pay in transportation, the following year, we get a certain amount reimbursed from the state, and because we didn't pay it, we're not going to receive that money in a subsidy next year. So our revenues will be decreased close to $1.6 million. We put $500,000 for bond reimbursement revenue. This has to do with old plan money when we make our bond payments that come in. You may have read in the paper, we're going to receive $1.8 million in Federal CARES Act or COVID money. We were told not to budget all of that. Some school districts are budgeting none of that for next year to help balance their budget. I don't think that's realistic. I think there are things that that can definitely be paid for, but I only put half of the money in this budget. Now that is something that maybe will have the benefit of all of that next year, but again, I'm trying to be very conservative. Revenue from the bond refunding, you just heard Mr. McShane talk about the bond refunding, and I only put $250,000 in because that was a number that was given to me a couple of weeks ago, and the interest rates keep dropping, so we're saving more money by holding off. So there's room in there for at least probably another $500,000 in revenue to add to that before I finalize the budget. We also have some cash in our food service fund, and the food service fund owes the general fund money. So I'm transferring $200,000 from the food service fund in to help balance the budget. But the effect of all of this represents a total decrease in all the revenues next year of $2,256,163. Most of that is probably from the local revenues and the transportation subsidy. Okay, what I've included as far as expenditures in this budget. For our Falcon Online Learning Academy, our cyber program, we're going to run it in-house this year versus using an outside school district, which helped us in the past. That will save us some money, but we will continue to have supplementals. I have kept that the same as last year. There's room to analyze that next week, see if there's something we can do. All of our bargaining groups have contractual raises that are anywhere between 3 to 3.5% built into their contract, so that's included in the budget. Our health insurance increases are 2.5 for medical. Our dental insurance went up 6% and vision 7%. The pension rate, our new PESAS rate went from 34.29 to 34.51, an increase of 0.22%. We are going to continue making the bond debt payments. We have to continue making 1.7 million in capital lease payments for the Act 39 project, which was a few years ago when they put in all new lighting in the schools and redid some of the HVAC equipment to have savings in utilities in the future. It also paid for some technology upgrades back then. I have a huge contingency that I put in this year, and the contingency is $1,150,000 versus $100,000 last year. There's two reasons why I did that. Number one, when I cut costs in my budget, when we prepared the budget, I went line by line with every principal, every department head, every administrator, and we looked at every single line. What do you need in supplies? What do you need in this? And I made it what we thought we would use based on their needs and based on a 5-year history of what was spent previously in the district. Before, you might say, oh, I'll put a little $5,000 in here, $10,000 here, $500 here. I have none of that in there. I want to know what we think we're going to spend, and if I have to transfer some money out of contingency as a budget transfer, if someone goes over, that will help us realize in budgeting where we overspent. That's the one reason. Number two is we have some potential contingent liabilities out there. Those could be from lawsuits. We don't know if we have settlements or whatever could happen. There's some potential liabilities from a while ago that we may have to pay. The one item that has not been finalized, which I think will be finalized, but which will be finalized by the time I do the final budget, is our liability insurance costs. Not been received yet. I do know that our workers' comp has decreased about $44,000, which I'm really happy about. So I got one and that's it. Changes in staffing included in this budget. The board and administration has worked very hard to not furlough any teacher. We have retirements. And to the extent that we can, we try not to fill those retirements. So there was a reduction of 6 teachers throughout the district due to retirements that we're not replacing in this budget. A reduction of 1 administrative position we're not replacing. And a reduction of 3 personal student aides. Potential additional changes could involve a hiring freeze, which would involve not replacing open positions right now. We have 4 additional teachers that retired, and we currently feel we need to replace them, but maybe we can find a way not to replace them. I don't know. That's something we'll have to look at in the next week or two. There is at least one additional administrative position that we can eliminate and not hire for. And to the extent that there are some other staff who happen to retire between now and the end of June, we could look into not replacing them also. That doesn't mean we won't, but we can look into it. Right now, they're built into the budget as if we are replacing them. Okay, here's what it looks like with everything in the budget that I explained. Our revenues went down $2,256,000. Our expenditures went up $2,820,000. It was almost a 3% reduction in our revenue and about a 3.71% increase in our expenditures. But we have a $5,076,000 deficit in our budget that we have to revenues. This is a little more detailed. You see our local went down about 8%. Changes $1.6 million. Again, that's due to our local taxes that will be collected due to COVID that they're anticipating. The state budget, a reduction of 1.6. The majority of that is our transportation subsidy we will not receive. Federal increase $713,000. Other increase $240,000. With $200 of that is cash transfer from my food service fund. So you can see the change in the revenues is, again, like I stated before, $2,256,000. If you want to look at it, this year our local revenues are only 25% of the budget. The state pays 69.1% of our costs, the federal 5.2%, and everything else less than 1%. So what this means is if the state keeps continuing to reduce our funding and they expect more to be paid by the local government, we don't have the capacity in Connellsville with our real estate values and businesses that come in to increase taxes by any extent that will help with that deficiency. So there will be hard decisions to make on what has to be done. Expenditures. Our salaries only went up 1.6% because we had some retirements, because there was around a 3.5% increase built into the collective bargaining agreements for salaries. The benefits actually went down $125,000. Purchase services, it increased 1.321. That is cyber school, that is special ed outside placements, that's court-placed children into juvenile detention facilities. It's all those outside placements for the majority of that 1.3 million. And again, we don't have much control over that. It is what it is. Supplies and utilities, we took the budget down $70,000. Our property and equipment went up $168,000. Our financing and the other, again, the majority of that is that $1 million contingency that I put in. The Career Center budget. It did not change much. We went from $4,407,000 in revenues to $4,466,000 in revenues for a difference of $58,000, which is only a 1.32% increase. And our expenditures increased to $58,225 also. So we've contained our costs at Career Center fairly well. Of course, it's much smaller. This is just a summary of a few items of significance. This is a summary of the teacher's contract. If you look in 2021, without any hires or without any retirements, the raise for next year would be $588,000. The cumulative money that was built into that contract over, 6 years was about $5,305,000 in raises over the time period of the contract, which resulted in a cumulative millage effect. If property taxes were raised during that period, which they weren't, it actually represents 5.67 mils of real estate taxes. In the meantime, our student population has declined. As our student population declines, we also get less funding from the state. This is just a chart of our fund balance history. Back in 2010-11, we had close to $14 million in fund balance. And it was spent down to a low where they almost could not make payroll back in 15-16 of $148,000. It was brought back up, and it has remained fairly constant. We had a $200,000 decrease last year, but it's been fairly consistent at $6.5 million. I know this is hard to see, but this is a comparison of the school district millage. Right now, our property tax rate is 14.2482. The most you can raise it by law if the board would elect to raise property taxes is 14.7754. If no other school districts this year raised their taxes, and we did, we would still be the lowest taxing school district in Fayette County by approximately 2.23 mils. In 14 years, you've only raised the millage by 13.1 to 97 mils, about 13 mils. If there was a property tax increase, that's if, the most by law that you would be allowed to do it, the median house in Connersville is $62,670 assessed value dollars. It would be a yearly increase of $33 per house. On a $100,000 house, it's $52.72, and you can double that for a $200,000 house of $105,000, which is less than $10 a month. One of the highest expensive houses in Connersville, you have to increase it. So it's not that much. I know it's a lot for people on fixed incomes, but it's less than on the highest price house. Again, it's less than $10 a month. These are some potential items I'm going to throw out there to balance the budget. We have a $5,076,000 shortfall. Again, we could sell the delinquent property taxes. That's really not recommended. It's a one-time infusion of about $1.3 million. We could take the transportation savings that we think we're going to have for this year, which we didn't pay our contractors of 1.7 to 8 million, and set that aside to help balance the budget for this year. That's a savings, because that definitely should be done, because that helps offset the transportation subsidy we're not going to get because we did not pay for that. Refunding the bond should bring in an additional $550,000 in pure savings on option A that Mr. McShane presented. If we really needed money, we could do the additional $1.2 million on the refunding the payments. It's something we can do, but again, it's kicking the can down the road, but it helps with the budget for 1 year only. We can eliminate another administrator, not replace them for someone who is retiring, and that's approximately $80,000 in salary and benefits. We could eliminate one support position with benefits of $60,000. We built into our Act 93 contracts are up this year. We put in the budget a 2% raise. If I took that out, I'm not suggesting this, but it's something that's in there that it's the board's decision. That's $80,000 that could be eliminated that is not contractual. That brings us up to $4,998,000, so I'm still short about $78,000 with all of those items if you wanted to do that, and some of those I know you don't want to do. If we raise the real estate taxes, I think the most we would collect is probably $480,000. You're not going to get much more than that. If we did not rehire the four teachers that retired, we in administration believe we need to hire for those positions. If there's some way we can move them around and not have to hire for the 4 additional teachers that retired, that would save $420,000. Other than that, we're going to have to become creative. Administration and the board's going to have to work together and figure out what we're going to do. We could eliminate programs. We could commit any other savings if we have any this year. I know we had a lot of costs related to COVID that we had to pay for, so I'm not quite sure how that's all going to fall out. And of course, we're going to revisit all the expenses between now and next week, look at what's happening with the state budgets. That's where we stand. Are there any questions?
Tax rate, you take 30% off the total, or do you not take 30% off? We're not collecting 30% of the year's worth of rate here, the total. Take 30% off the 480, that's the total. Ready, take off 3 on, take that.
Any other questions?
Okay, I believe we finished finance. Let's just continue through the agenda and come back around to athletics. Moving to food service, please.
Food service, correct?
We're going to stay on the same page that we're on.
Request approval of summer food operations at the following sites beginning June 22nd through July 31st, 2020. Dunbar Township Elementary, Holston Township Elementary, Springfield Township Elementary. And I so move.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Hart, do you have anything else?
Nothing, thank you.
Mrs. Basinger? That's all we have.
Thank you. Personnel review and liaison, please.
Request the approval to accept the resignation of Dr. Laura Jacob, administrator, with final date of employment to be June 26th, per Act 14, Pennsylvania Code, or unless released prior to the June 26th pending appropriate replacement and transition with replacement as approved by the superintendent.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Item B, request the approval to accept the retirement of Sue Suzuki, support professional, effective May 29th, 2020. And I so move.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Item C, request the approval to accept the retirement of Pamela Basinger, support professional, effective June 18th, 2020. And I so move. Second.
Motion is second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Next item, request the approval to accept the retirement of Laura Brooks, support professional, effective June 11th, 2020. And I so move.
Motion is second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Request the approval to accept the retirement of Joan Williams as the custodian, effective June 24th, 2020. And I so move.
Motion is second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Item F, request the approval to accept the retirement of Danny Ball, administrator, effective June 30th, 2020. And I so move.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Item G, request the approval of permanent contract for the following professional employees based upon completion of 3 years satisfactory service to the school district. And they are Gary Detweiler, Eric Ellsworth, Mikey Martucci, Jana Olson, Brian Strickland, Justin Strider, Claire Swigler, and Caitlin Ziegler. And I so move.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Item H, request the approval of the employment agreement between the Conso Area School District and Colonel Eric Sheets from the JROTC Army instructor for 205 work days effective July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021, with the salary to be established by the United States Army and benefits equal to the Conso Area Education Association membership. And I so move.
Motion is second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
And item I, request the approval of the employment agreement between Conso Area School District and Chief Joseph A. Fournier, JROTC Army instructor, for 220 days work, effective July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021, with the salary to be established by the United States Army and benefits equal to the Clarksville Area Education Association membership. And I so move.
Motion is second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.
And that's all we have on the agenda. Mr. Brown, what do you have?
Yes, I do. I'd like to add a J to personnel, if I may. This motion was not on the agenda on last night, so just letting the board and everyone else know that. Under personnel, letter J, request approval to retain 3 current high school administrators in their current position. I so move.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Since it was not on the agenda, any questions from the audience? Hearing no question. Hearing no questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Martre, do you have anything to add?
We have nothing under security this evening. Mrs. Stanks, do you have anything?
Hold on a minute, please. You don't have, is that what you?
No, we don't.
Okay. We're under policy and legislation. Mr. Horstman, please.
Mr. Martre, under Personnel and Review and Liaison, I just wanted to congratulate the 8 teachers that earned their tenure. That's quite a milestone in their career. I wanted to wish the 5 retirees the best of luck, and regardless of our roles at Collinsville, all the retirees impacted our students and worked well with our students and with our team. Specifically, I had an opportunity to work very closely with Mr. Boggs, and I wanted to wish him the best of luck in his retirement, and I wanted to wish Dr. Jacob the best in her new endeavors.
Thank you. Mr. Horstman, policy and legislation, please.
Thank you. Revised policy, request approval of the following revised policy. 005, organization, and I so move.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
That's all I have, Mr. Lake. Mr. Granado.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Mr. Bradley. That's all we have, thank you.
Thank you. Safety and security, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. O'Malley. We have nothing this evening to add. Mrs. Sankson, do you have anything further? Mr. Parlay. That's all we have, Mr. President.
Thank you. Might as well stay with you, special ed.
Under A, we have a request approval of the adoption of the Intermediate Unit 1 IDA Part B policies and procedures as proposed, and I so move.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
B, request approval of the agreement between Collinsville Area School District and Marquette, Pennsylvania for the 2020-21 school year as proposed, and I so move.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
C, request approval of an additional social worker for the 2021 school year at a cost of $48,500. Total cost for 3 social workers will be $145,500, and I so move.
Motion second, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
And our committee meeting was held on May 11th. Our next committee meeting will be June 8th at 1 p.m. And that's all we have this evening. Mr. O'Malley, Mr. Lake, do you have anything further?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. D'Amico. That's all we have, Mr. O'Malley.
Thank you. Moving to student services, please.
Services, A, Smart Future
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
C, resignation, request approval to accept the executive resignation of Mary Lee Patton, and school activities director effective June 11th, 2020.
Second. Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
C, resignation, request approval to accept the supplemental resignation of Mary Lee Patton, and stage life effective June 11th, 2020.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
There was a community meeting held on Monday, May 11th. Trouble about Mr. Montiel,
I have nothing,
Mr. Lake, Mr. D'Amico. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Panzella, technology, please.
Employment policy, request approval of the 2020-2021 Technology Department employment policy as presented. I so move.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Next, request approval to authorize the sale of surplus Chromebooks at a cost of $50 for graduating seniors until July 1st, 2020, to the district staff until July 15th, 2020, to individual members of the general public hereafter on a first-come, first-served basis, and individuals being eligible to purchase one Chromebook per person. I so move.
Second. Motion second, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Next, request approval to purchase 1,150 Lenovo Chromebooks from Gov Connection at a cost of $252,825 as budgeted for the 2020-2021 school year. And I so move.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Just for everyone to know, we had a virtual technology meeting was held on May 15th, 8 a.m. That's all I have.
Nothing, thank you.
All that?
Nothing further, thank you.
Good. Anything else? Thank you. That's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Transportation, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Matic. Mr. Panzella, you have anything?
Thank you.
Mr. Harshman?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Evans? We have nothing this evening, Mr. Matic, thank you.
All right, thank you. Back to page 1. Athletics and recreation, please.
We have nothing right now. Mr. Martre? Mr. Lake?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Buildings and grounds, please, Mr. Panzella.
Clean water pool testing, request approval of independent contractor agreement between Danny Boggs and Colville Area School District for swimming pool water testing. 6 days a week, at a monthly rate of $1,200 beginning July 1st, 2020. Expenses related to Mr. Boggs' certification and miles associated with pool water testing to be paid by the independent contractor. Either party may have 30 days notice to cancel the agreement, and the agreement will be approved contingent on approval of solicitor. I said so.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Next, request approval of Shane Nicholson as a replacement for Calvin Schrader due to sewage plan checks. First solicitor review and approval. I so move.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Just so everybody know, we had a committee meeting that was held on May 18th. Mr. Martre, you have anything else? Okay, Ms. Sang. Mr. Boggs. Mr. Kirk. That's all we have, thank you.
Thank you. Your pre-library, please.
I have nothing, thank you. Mr. Panzella?
Nothing, thank you.
We have nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Career Technical Center.
Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. I don't think we have anything. Mr. Mongello, do you have anything? Mr. James? We have nothing else.
Thank you. Curriculum, please.
Thank you, Mr. Maddox. A, item Fifth, request approval for the administration to submit flexible instructional day application to the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and I so move.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
B, student-teacher agreement with IUP. Request approval for the educator and clinician preparation field experience agreement between the Connersville Area School District and Indiana University of Pennsylvania for the 2020-2021 school year, and I so move.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
C, student-teacher agreement, SRU. Request approval for the affiliate agreement between Connersville Area School District and Slippery Rock University of Pennsylvania for the 2020-2021 school year, and I so move.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Monjo, anything to add? Mrs. Sangston? Mr. Bradley?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
That's all we have, Mr. O'Malley.
Thank you. Move to cyber, please.
I have nothing for cyber tonight. Mr. Harshman?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Monjo?
Nothing, thanks.
And Mr. Ghost out there?
I have nothing, thank you.
There he is. That's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Federal programs, Mrs. Sangston, please.
Yeah, nothing right now. Mr. Marjorie? Mr. Bradley?
Nothing, thanks.
Thank you. And we're back to the beginning. Under President's report, forgot to mention at the beginning of the meeting, we were in executive session from 6 to approximately 7 p.m. on personnel issues. And for those of you who weren't here yesterday, we also had a personnel meeting on the 26th from 6 to approximately 7:45. On May 6th, we had an executive session from 5:30 to 9:30 p.m., and that was on contract and personnel issues. And on 5/14, we had an executive session from 6 p.m. to 10:45 p.m. on personnel issues. That brings us to public comment for non-agenda items.
Mr. O'Malley, before we go there, may I take a point of personal privilege?
Sure.
Thank you. I would like to congratulate the seniors this year. When you do get to graduate, I know there's a lot of thought going into that and a lot of excitement for you. I also want to commend the teaching staff and the other personnel in the district who took it upon themselves to make a visual notice of your accomplishment, and it's on the hillside between CAMS and this building right. And the teachers sometimes don't get a lot of credit for the extra stuff they do, and as a board, we appreciate that effort that you put forth for our graduating seniors and their parents. And I also would like to wish Dr. Jacob good luck and have a great superintendentship in the future. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. O'Malley, if I could,
Yes.
Mr. Bernardo just got me thinking, and everybody knows how I feel about Facebook. But, and I get it on every once in a while on my wife's Facebook, and I look at it, so the most brilliant thing I've seen on Facebook, and the only thing I ever seen on there that was pretty smart was, we're wrestling with the idea of graduation. So they come up with a great conclusion, and what it was, if we can have a graduation, which we plan on doing, and I think we can do it with social distancing at the stadium, at maybe the later June date, but if we don't, what they said is, what we could line up, we could go to Walmart or Home Depot, and we could go down the aisles and let all the graduating seniors come down. We could make announcements, and we could have everybody there, families and all, because there's no restrictions. So if we felt to do that, we can always go to Walmart here in Collinsville, and I'm sure they let us come in and graduate the seniors.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lake. To public comment, Mr. McLuckie, please.
Thank you, Mr. Matic. Thank you, Mr. Matic. I don't hear so good, and I tried to ask my wife, and she has a mask on. I couldn't hear her either. I just want to make sure I understood Mr. Granot's motion and the vote. Our high school administration will be the same as it's been in the past. Nick Bosnick will be our principal.
Yes.
Okay, I thank you very much. I thank you for that, and I thank you for all that you do. Nobody was having a whole lot of fun here tonight with budget and so many of the problems that you have to face. I appreciate the dedication that you people bring to our school district. Some of you have been doing it for years. I think when Franny first got on, and Kevin, I think I was a senior in high school, and still around doing it, and that's to be commended. I feel very strongly about Nick Bosnick, but I would not have come here if I wasn't convinced that the staff at the high school, the parents, the community at large, but most importantly, that the students were behind Nick Bosnick. And I got to just give a little bit of a shout out two ways. Number one was a letter that was written by Mrs. Karen Sanzone to the Courier early this week, where she outlined her opinion that Nick Bosnick was very highly respected and competent and a good guy, and that now with this pandemic and all the special arrangements that are made for the coming school year, just a bad time to be changing administration. And then the other thing, and I really give them credit, these young people putting on a petition to Facebook, Twitter, and it took, last count that I saw today, it was over 1,500 people, and it was all positive. Again, thank you very much. I want to also just say something about Vicki McWilliams and all the help she gives to our Falcon Foundation. She's very, very special. And I thank Mr. Bradley for how accessible he makes himself and how kind he always is in working with us. Thank you very much.
Mr. McLuckie, I think that's the shortest speech I've ever heard you give. Mr. Bobby McLuckie. Thank you. Kate Painter. You're good. Alex Huffman. Okay. Maria Woods.
I'm good.
Okay. Zane McBoyle.
I will be brief. I did have a 4-page letter that I had written in support of Mr. Bosnick, but no need to read that now. I was here to support and thank not only Mr. Bosnick, but everyone who participated in that petition. I too signed it, and it was student-driven, and I want to thank the students of this community for getting that petition together. Second, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the class of 2020. They're an amazing group of kids that are going to change this world for the better. To quote Dr. Seuss, so, be it in Buxbaum or Bixby or Bray, or Mordecai, Ali, Van Allen, O'Shea, you're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way. Thank you.
David McDonald.
President O'Malley, members of the board, Mr. Bradley back there. In 2011, members of the board gave me an opportunity to come to Connellsville. And in that first month that I was here, it was my pleasure to meet people by the name of Dan Spanish, Mr. McCluskey, Donnie Lynn, Jimmy Joe Lembo, Wally Schroyer, and many other people that make this community something that is exciting and proud. These students in 15 to 20 years that are here to support Mr. Bosnick will look at him and reverence his stature in this community like these gentlemen have here tonight done. They're all somebody we should be proud of. I had the ability to work with Nick in Indy for 6 years. Nick isn't Dave McDonald. He is so much better than me. He's an unbelievable person. Half the people back here wanted to punch me in the side of the face at times. And I understand that because leadership has a price. Nick has respect for students, faculty, staff, community members, and his peers. And that should never be overlooked. And your decision tonight is the right one, and I thank you.
And last but not least, Jeanette Wadsworth, please.
I think everything's been said, so thank you.
Okay. Thank you. That's all we have. Mr. Bradley?
Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. It's like 4 or 5 hard acts to follow, starting with Mr. Lake and then Mr. McLaughlin. Those are 2 very hard acts to follow, but I have a few announcements and they won't be as entertaining as the other comments. First, I received a letter from Sean Sullivan, our store manager at our local Martin's, yesterday, and it states, "We would like to thank you for everything you are doing for our local schools and students, especially during this difficult time. We are proud to provide some financial relief for you ongoing. On behalf of your local Martins, we are pleased to donate $1,344 via the enclosed check. Our new company purpose, connecting families for a better future, and at the risk of sounding sentimental, we're thrilled to know that your work will ensure brighter days ahead for families everywhere." I want to thank Mr. Sullivan, I want to thank Martins for that donation, and at this time I'd like to make that donation to the board on behalf of Martins and thank them for their gracious gift to the district. Second, I wanted to thank the administration. In about 3 days' time, the administration with a heck of a lot of input from the student body, professional staff, the community, and including some of our help from the city of Connellsville with Chief Hammerly, City Clerk Vern Oler, Chief Hammerly, our own Mr. Parlak. They organized a school district senior parade that will be going tentatively on June 4th. The specifics of that school parade will be listed on our website in the route. And what we're hoping to do with that is not substitute any sort of other celebration, but to enhance that celebration. We're looking for the students to have one opportunity to let their hair down and have some fun. So we think it will be safe, we think it will be fun, and we hope it's loud and enjoyable for all those students. And line the parade route, it'll be broadcast. The parade route will broadcast where that's going to be. and we hope to hear a lot of cheers and a lot of celebration for this very unique and special class. And lastly, I wanted to thank the student body. We put out a plan based on administrator input, and we put that plan to the Department of Health on how we're going to turn in our materials and how we're going to clean out our buildings. And the student body responded. They're starting that process these next couple of days at all of our buildings, and we wanted to thank them for the maturity that they've shown in this and being able to do that and be able to respond. And they're really in a spotlight that's been on this, not only senior class, but all the students here at Collinsville, and I can't be prouder of the way they responded. Thank you, and that's all I have this evening.
I guess it started today. There was some emails that were floating around. Maybe something on Facebook. I haven't seen any of it, to be honest with you, but some other board members got it. That we were eliminating our STEM program. We are not eliminating our STEM program. So I don't know how or why that rumor got started. But it's just a rumor. The STEM program in the school district is not from what. So just want to make that aware, everybody aware of that. And Mr. Brad, the parade route, we're going to post that.
Correct. We're going to communicate that to the seniors. They'll receive the email and other notification, and then we're going to post that as well on the website.
All right, thank you. Anything else from anybody? A motion to adjourn.